Today, we will be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election based on new polling averages from all 50 states. Before we get started, please subscribe to my channel for more election content and election predictions. We will start by filling out the solid states for each candidate. For Kamala Harris, those states would be California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Delaware, and the District of Columbia. For Donald Trump, his states would be Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, and Iowa. After the solid states, Donald Trump stands at 143 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 162 electoral votes. We will now be moving on to the likely states for each candidate, starting with Kamala Harris. Harris will likely win New Jersey, Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico, and Maine's congressional districts. Moving on to the likely states for Donald Trump. Trump will likely win the states of Texas and Florida. Both of these states he won in 2016 and 2020. And since then, these states have just shifted to the right. Moving on to the lean states for each candidate. The state of Minnesota, Tim Walz's home state, will be going to Kamala Harris. The state of New Hampshire will also be lean Kamala Harris. Biden won the state by double digits in 2020, but since then, this state has shifted to the right, just like Texas and Florida. Moving on to Donald Trump. Georgia and North Carolina will be lean Donald Trump. In 2020, Biden flipped the state of Georgia for the first time in many elections. But since then, just like many other states throughout the nation, after Biden's poor 4 years of performance, these states have just shifted to the right and became more conservative. So Georgia and North Carolina will be going to Donald Trump. Same with the state of Maine. Maine will be going to Donald Trump too, with its one electoral vote. And now, Donald Trump stands at 251 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 225 electoral votes as we move into the final states that will ultimately decide the 2024 presidential election. Starting with the state of Michigan. Out of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, in 2020, Joe Biden won the state of Michigan by the biggest margin. And even with a massive shift to the right in these past 4 years, Michigan will remain blue under Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Taking a look at the polls in Michigan, we see that Kamala Harris leads by 3.2% as of today. Taking a look at the polls below, we have Kamala Harris leading in almost every single poll, and the most recent ones have her leading by 7, 6, and 8%, which is a huge margin in the polls. However, the polls could underestimate Trump once again, and Trump could very well so win the state of Michigan. But as of now, I'll be giving it to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Moving on to the state of Wisconsin, I will be giving Wisconsin to Kamala Harris by the slightest of margins. In 2020, Joe Biden won the state by 0.6%, but taking a look at the polls today, we see that Kamala Harris leads by 3.6%, which is an even bigger lead than her lead in Michigan. Taking a look at the polls below, Harris leads in every single poll in Wisconsin, which once again shows her momentum gained from the Democratic National Convention and just her improving as she gets more time to campaign. Because of this, I will be giving Wisconsin to Kamala Harris, but take in mind that Donald Trump could very much so win the state of Wisconsin, and the polls do tend to underestimate him. But as of now, I will be giving Wisconsin to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Moving on to the state of Arizona. Biden flipped this state in 2020, and taking a look at the polls today, we see that Kamala Harris leads by 1.1% overall. But as you take a look from the past to today, we see that she is gradually improving her stats in Arizona. And if this trend continues, she will very much so win the state. So as of now, I will be giving Arizona to Kamala Harris by a very, very, very slight margin. Moving on to the state of Nevada. Biden won this state in 2020, but when you take a look at his margin of victory compared to Clinton's in 2016, Nevada actually shifted to the right, unlike many other states. And after Biden's poor 4 years of performance, Nevada has shifted to the right even more. Taking a look at the polls in Nevada, you see that Kamala Harris leads by 0.3%, but this is an extremely slight margin, and the polls do always tend to underestimate the Republicans, and because of this, Donald Trump should very much so be leading in the state. Looking at the polls below, we see that Trump leads in every single poll, with a few exceptions at the top, but with Harris plus 18 and plus 18 are extremely unrealistic numbers, and those polls are just not accurate. And Nevada should be going to Donald Trump. And now, it all comes down to one state. The state of Pennsylvania will decide the winner of the 2024 presidential election. Taking a look at the polls in Pennsylvania, Harris leads by 1.6%. This margin is very small considering she's leading in over 3% in Wisconsin and Michigan, and the polls underestimated Trump both elections in the state. Taking a look at the polls below, we see a very even race between the two candidates, with both candidates leading in some polls. But if Harris can't pull ahead in these polls in the Keystone State, then she is likely to lose, just because of how both elections the polls have underestimated Donald Trump, and how in general across the nation Trump performs better than polled. And because of that, I will be giving the Keystone State of Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral votes to Donald Trump, which pushes him over the 270 electoral count barrier, making him the next president of the United States. And finally, the 2nd Congressional District of Nebraska will go to Donald Trump, making the final electoral count 277 to 261, and Donald Trump wins a second term in the White House. If you made it here, please subscribe to my channel for more election content and election predictions. Thank you for watching.